Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside AutoMind. Today I'm joined by someone who brings an honest and no-nonsense approach to the industry. He spent nearly 18 years on the asset side before transitioning into brokerage. That background shaped everything about the way he operates. He's the owner of Schulz Logistics out of Nebraska, a brokerage known for long-time partnerships, fairness with carriers, and a business style that cuts through all the noise and corporate fluff. Joe, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
All right, so a little about you. I see you spent a huge part of your career on the asset side before building Schulz Logistics. I'm curious, when you finally stepped into brokerage, what surprised you the most about how the industry actually worked behind the curtain?
Not a ton there. Everything that's done behind the scenes on a brokerage is the exact same on an asset side. You just don't have all the equipment and driver maintenance, all that sort of stuff behind the scenes. If I had to pick one thing that was the most surprising was, everybody when they walk into a new business thinks, oh man, I'm going to change the world day one. They're going to see how different we are. And that's not really how it went. It's been a very long and tedious road to earn any sort of trust from carriers and customers alike. That was the really shocking part. I mean, we've been around for almost a decade now, and we still battle that on a pretty regular basis.
Okay, I like that one. So when you were on the trucking side, I guess, what was something you always wish brokers understood but rarely did?
I wish they understood me personally, and the views of the company I worked for were to build long-term relationships and kind of work together, and that's a process. A trucking company just can't start tomorrow and have 8 trucks a week in whatever market. It doesn't work like that. But all of them are 90% of the brokers I have worked with are short-sighted. If the market goes down, they're going to make every dollar they can off of you. And then they're going to complain and moan as soon as you start charging them more and do the same thing back to them. Which, that was what kind of led to my exuberance and, misplaced hope, I guess, when I started Schulz Logistics, that we just do this a little bit different. People are going to see that, and it's going to be a breath of fresh air, and everybody's going to want to work with us. But that distrust runs very, very deep. And honestly, until you go through a couple business cycles working with the same carrier, they don't really know how you're going to react in specific markets. So it's a multi-year process earning that trust.
Yeah, so that kind of ties into, on the pre-call, you mentioned that fairness isn't like a buzzword for you. So, that's something you've built the whole company around. So that's a perfect segue into what shaped the philosophy for you early on.
Lack of other brokers being fair with me. That was also, everything. I get asked the question, it's like, what did you set out to be, or what did you want to be your company when you started this? And I'm like, well, it didn't have a real long list of what I wanted to be. I had a much longer list of what I did not want to be. So you find the pain points, and if you avoid those, you're naturally going to gravitate towards being a better company to work with and addressing a lot of that stuff. It's just been tougher than I expected.
For sure. No, I think that kind of shows where you're at now, because I feel like most people, a lot of companies never go past the small stage. For you, what was like the first sign that Schulz Logistics had the potential to become, a mid-sized national player like you guys are now?
The pandemic, probably. We kind of earned our size at a very difficult time, when everybody else was scared to death to take on any new business because everybody knew there weren't enough trucks to haul everything, and you're going to get squeezed at some point no matter how high your rate is. We went with a more, let's just try and get as much freight as we can, pretty close to where the market's at right now, because you look back 20 years and it was a larger spike and longer than anything we'd seen in at least 20 years and probably forever. I mean, I haven't been here forever, but I think it's safe to say that was a once in a lifetime scenario. But also, I've been through enough of those to know that it doesn't ever last forever. It always corrects back down pretty close to where operating costs are plus, because that's where carriers will start taking business. If they can make their 10%, that's kind of over their costs. That's where it's going to gravitate towards in a natural supply and demand world without any roadblocks. So once we got back to there, I knew we were going to be way over market and be able to recoup any of the losses we got. So we were probably more aggressive during the pandemic with our bidding. We didn't make a ton of money Doreen it. We made it after, but we sacrificed some of that profit we probably could have made at the end of 2020 and 21 in exchange for more growth that, you know, we knew was a pretty certain calculated risk that was going to pay off once the market corrected back to where it really should be. So that was where we made that big adjustment, and we've continued growing just because of how we handled ourselves diplomatically with our customers through that time period. That earned a lot of trust. So we've continued to grow, and now we're kind of in a phase of having to adjust where we can't just have an operations group, a scheduling group, and then an accounting management group. We've had to further refine our groups and processes to be able to handle more business. Kind of our current stage of growth that we had to adapt to a little bit.
Well, that's a pretty big accomplishment in its own, because a lot of small to mid-sized businesses had a lot of trouble during COVID, or some of them didn't even make it.
Yep.
So the fact that you guys played the long game and kind of knew, you know, it's going to bounce back, and then made all that uptrend afterwards, that's a big deal. So I mean, I love the insight like this because it shows why you guys operate the way you do. So I mean, yeah, that's a big accomplishment there. But let's zoom out a bit. Right now, the freight world, like we talked about a little bit, is dealing with a weird mix, you know, demand pockets, trust issues, people tightening budgets. I mean, all the way to carriers being picky, all kinds of stuff. From where you sit, what feels like the biggest shift happening right now?
It's a really, really odd place that we're in economically right now, because freight is flat to possibly slight decline when you take holiday and seasonal stuff into account, but rates are sky high, just skyrocketing. Usually that's accompanied by a big increase in freight, but this time we're being hit by a big decrease in supply. There was a very, very large number of carriers in 2025 through September, the last time I checked, that had gone out of business. It just, you know, it had been gradually declining rates since 2022. Didn't show any real signs of letting up, but the national averages got below the cost carriers run at, and it stayed there long enough that it put a ton of people out of business. And then now we're taking even more drivers off the road with the non-domicile CDL. And I mean, I don't really want to get into the politics of that, but the end of the day, there's fewer trucks operating today than there was a month ago due to that policy, which means there's less trucks to handle everything. So as freight falls, the supply of trucks is falling faster. So then you get a rate spike in almost a little bit of a downward economy, which is a really, really strange thing. It doesn't happen that way very often, but that's kind of where we're at. And I know that there's still a ton more drivers on the road that don't fit the criteria they're trying to get to. So probably even have further to go. And I don't know that freight's going to drop a ton more. So we're going to see a fairly prolonged rate increase is what I believe right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. A lot of people in the same industry we've been talking to have pretty much echoed what you're mentioning. It seems like that also kind of leads into, I guess, fewer opportunities or new partners. You kind of mentioned that on our pre-call about the last couple of years. I guess for new partners, hasn't been the same. So has that changed recently, or is that door still mostly closed? Or
that's one of those contrarian things that work different than what most people probably expect. When there's turmoil and we're squeezed and losing money and having trouble finding trucks, that's when we grow the most. The easy times, when you could hire anybody in their grandma's basement and they'll be able to do a good job, it's hard to get customers because people will come in, bid stuff cheap, still be able to cover it just because there's way more trucks out there than there is freight. It's right now is when your relationships that you've built through that time can keep you going. And it's also when new customers are looking for a change because the people they've gotten used to over the last 3 years in the easy time aren't cutting it now. They're more likely to give us a shot on a lane or two. And this is when we grow. So it's kind of painful in the short term because you like seeing the profit and the numbers and doing well and making money. But at the same time, right now, when we aren't making anything to maybe even losing money, this is our chance to grow. So it's kind of a weird time.
Yeah, no, I love actually that you mentioned the fact that some of the people they worked with previously may not cut it now. So like if a shipper's burned by another brokerage, How do you go about rebuilding that trust, I guess, without kind of sounding like every other brokerage claiming they're different?
Well, all you can do is explain how you do it and get to this point. Like right now, we'd be in much, much worse shape. And I know there's a lot of our competitors that have already gone back and had to get rate increases just to keep them afloat. And we're only 2-3 months into this kind of rate spike we're seeing. The reason we haven't had to do that yet is because we've got a number of carriers that work with us on contract rates year round. And we took care of them and kept them profitable through 2022, 23, 24, and so far in 25. Now that the rate spike is happening, they're sticking with their freight. Like, they're still working with us. We haven't had fallout on any of that yet because they know we're going to get adjusted at some point. It's just not going to be as fast. But also, they don't want to throw away our support for the next downturn, and there will be one. And that's why we try to pair or partner with carriers that have more of a long-term view, that are looking at this for a career, not how much can I make this year. That's how we do it. We build relationships. We don't try and make every dollar we can. We try and keep the people worth trusting profitable and wanting to work with us. So we can absorb a lot more than the average brokerage can during these rate spikes. So we're not completely immune. I mean, we're to the point where we've started discussions on, hey, if this keeps up, how are we going to address it? You know, this isn't a sustainable set of rates for where we're at now. But we're not in a position where we have to demand something within the next 2 weeks or we're going to have big financial trouble either. So that gives us a little bit more time. And if customers trust it, they trust it. If they don't, they don't. You just got to hope they give you a shot to prove it.
No, I like that outlook. And you also mentioned the relationships, which I feel like are big in any industry. You know, you kind of make it to the, like, I guess you guys at this point, you guys made it to the point where you can be a little selective, but how do you decide which opportunities align with your long-term approach or ones that maybe don't fit with what you're trying to build, you know, right now?
That's trial and error, man. That's how I live my life. Sometimes you just have to try stuff, and sometimes it blows up in your face and people look back and think, what were you thinking? And then sometimes it works out and you look brilliant. But at the end of the day, you don't really know how people are going to react. And that's part of the reason we have trouble overcoming trust with carriers. Until you see us until you're working with us when the rates are down in the bottom of the barrel, and you don't know if we're going to stay with the same rate and honor what we said. So you kind of have to get through some of those scenarios before you can you can solidify your trust at all. Before that, it's just words. So it takes time. Even if somebody believes you in principle.
Yeah, it's all about, well, I guess it's necessary to take risks, or should we say calculated risks, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, try to be as calculated, yeah. No, but I think your perspective hits differently because you've lived both sides of the industry, so it gives people a real inside look at how things actually work.
Yeah. One of the things that I preach to my customers is, yeah, we can probably drop rates right now and get everything covered. But at the end of the day, you know, if you pay over market, yeah, you're spending more money. But if you work with people that are going to use that money to build relationships, it's going to pay back. Like, if you get your rates lower than cost for carriers and you make them work with you at a loss, like, that does no good. That does not prepare you for the next upswing. You know, that just leads you to more capacity issues and a lack of trust with people to work with you when you need them. And but it's corporations, and I get that. I mean, I learned all about corporations. Their one and only obligation is to maximize value for its shareholders, and that's it. So getting them to see that spending more money actually benefits their stockholders long term is a tough sell, but I still believe that it's the right answer.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's always about keeping people happy and always making more money. But again, you touched on the relationships. That's always a big deal. You know, you can't harp on that enough. So I kind of want to move into the leadership side because I'm sure you've made some big decisions, you know, growing Schulz Logistics. When you think about your leadership style, what's something you do intentionally because of something you maybe experienced earlier in your career?
Support and develop other people.
Good one.
Because in my past, like, every decision I had made was criticized, pulled apart. I saw things very differently than the previous company I worked for. And just, I'd win some, I'd lose most. And that's something I wanted to do different because, you know, a diversity of opinions and directions. I mean, you're never going to listen to anybody 100%, but you do want to get a feel for what everybody else sees, because I don't see everything that happens every day anymore. Like, I don't have eyes on every interaction. I don't have eyes on what everybody does. And having everybody's input and being able to let them be responsible for their own success in their role is something that is really important to me. It's worked. I mean, I think our employees are extraordinarily happy. They love their job. They love the responsibility. They love that I support their ideas and how they want to run their individual business units and job, to have input there. You know, obviously there's times where you have to correct and be like, well, this isn't working, let's try something like this. Just support of my employees is probably one of the biggest traits of my leadership that I've developed from my past.
I think that should be the top one in anyone in a leadership position. I think we all worked for people that did not do quite a good job at all at that. But this actually came up in the last episode we recorded, but it's crazy that it kind of hits home again here. Is I was told previously by a supervisor that people are your superpower. And, like people just hear it and you're like, oh, okay. But when you really think about it, it's very true. And it all goes back to those relationships, not just whether it's with, of course, your team, but also customers, potential customers. Sometimes it also comes down, I also said this previously, is about, it's not always about what you know, it's about who you know.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you mentioned like everyone's opinion is valid because it's different. And so it kind of shows like there's many times where I'm sure you've seen this. A lot of people seen it where it doesn't always matter about age either necessarily. Some of the people think older people may have more wisdom and may more experience and their opinion is a little more valid, which is not necessarily true. The younger generation may see it differently. So yeah, a lot of people just discount people just because they're new or they don't have experience, which is, crazy to think about. But
and it is. I mean, we've got a pretty wide range of people. We've got people in their 30s and 50, all the way to the 50s. We don't have anybody in the 60s to 70s, I don't believe. But yeah, everybody has their unique perspective. And I was reading a book where it talks about everybody's opinions and just perspective of the world, or really any individual thing, comes from a collection of their experiences through life, both personal experiences they had and also the world they grew up in. So you want to have a blend of those things because you don't want to write off history completely with the older generations and people, but you also can't ignore the younger ones that have a very real and now perspective on the world. So
very true. Yeah, another good trait that you have. So I guess being that comes across to me as you're very genuine. So in being genuine or trying to maintain that in a and be transparent in a world where maybe a lot of people feel they have to sound polished or overly corporate. Like, how do you maintain that genuine and transparent feel?
Can't do anything else.
It's just you, right?
If I tried sales, I'd likely fail miserably, or unless I found somebody that appreciated genuine. I mean, I'm not going to have the fancy shoes and the slicked hair and, the big city look, or I'm not going to have the buzzwords. I hate frickin' buzzwords. It's like, just say what you mean. You say a buzzword, 10 different people are going to have 10 different ideas of what it means. Just simplify things, communicate on a very simple level so people know what you're thinking. And I think this is just what I am. It just feels unnatural to, be anything different, I guess. And then people always know what they're going to get. Like people can come talk to me. You might not get the answer you want to hear, but you're going to know it's what I think. And you also are going to know that I'm open to discussing it. Like, let's hear your side and talk about where the differences are and why, and dig into it a little bit.
No, for sure. I think we all experience this every day in any conversation, whether it's friends, families, or strangers. You can tell when someone's being genuine. It comes across, sometimes it's pretty obvious most of the time. So, the fact that I'm sure your team can see that, I mean, it seems to me, and I don't know you as well as they do, that you are genuine. So I'm sure that's a great trait, another great trait to have as being a leader. The one thing I like to ask a lot of people in leadership positions is, what is a recent challenge that you faced as a leader that taught you something maybe new about yourself? I feel like there's always space to learn something new about yourself through different challenges.
Yeah, I am always trying to learn something new about myself, and it's, I guess, one of the things I've found over the last couple of years is I've tried to step back from the daily operations and individual decisions as much as I can and turn into more of kind of a guidance counselor for the people handling those roles. And that's been hard to do. I look at things and I see, well, this is the answer. To step back and let somebody else be in charge of that stuff, it's been hard. Like that was something that surprised me about me, that, how much I liked the daily rates, looking at markets, where to set prices, what quotes to accept from carriers, who to work with and why. That's been kind of a hard thing to step back from, but I've also been able to do it. So I guess learning that I'm able to overcome being out of my comfort zone is something that I'm capable of doing. So I guess
That's a good one because definitely I think everyone should learn to some capacity to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
That's where that sounds kind of cliche or a buzz phrase, but it's kind of true because that's where you learn about yourself, or, that's where you make the most progress. Or
Yeah. I really try to embody what I want this company to be. And, the being genuine and transparency and open and compromise are one thing. And like we're talking, right now, I wish I could show it so you could see the whole office, but I have somebody rock climbing, big poster that says your comfort zone will kill you. And that's something I've noticed since I had a young age. You can go all the way back to some of the businesses that operated back then that went out of business because they got complacent and just said, well, this is how we've always done it. You've seen billion-dollar companies fall for that mentality. And that really has been driven into my head. That was some of the struggles in my previous career, very much a old school, this is how we've always done it sort of approach and not wanting to adapt. So being able to be comfortable outside of your comfort zone is something I really kind of push on everybody. We make some changes and, really kind of empathize with them that, this is going to be tricky for a while. We're here to support you, but we want everybody to continuously get better. We want to support them becoming better employees, better people, better partners if they're married, better family members, better friends. We want everybody to continue improving and never be content with what you are today. Keep working on getting better. And that's kind of a motto for our company, so I like to embody that.
No, perfectly said, because I feel like we are creatures of habit. So it's so easy for everyone to get comfortable and want to stay there, especially the way the world is now. It's like Uber Eats, food comes right to your door. When you go grocery shopping, you can just have them bring it to your car. There's just so many conveniences now that it is hard for people to kind of want to challenge themselves. And it's like complacency kills. There's tons of phrases or, phrases about that describes that perfectly.
Yep.
If you could give it advice to someone maybe just stepping into the brokerage world, what's something that you think you could tell them that maybe most people would never think to say?
You see some weird stuff, and I don't know if that's preempting my answer or if that's the answer. Just try to make sense of as many things as you can, because there's a ton of stuff that doesn't make sense between how customers or carriers can react at times. Things that go on with your employees or your coworkers can be surprising at times. Get used to unordinary, which for me that's kind of weird. You mentioned routine a minute ago, and I am probably one of the most routine people that you maybe ever talk to. If my keys are set in a different spot than where I have them every single day, they could be lost for a day. Everything is done the exact same way. Almost every day. I eat the same thing for breakfast every single day. Get up at the same time every single day. That's how I am, but I also know that other areas in life and business, you can't just be that routine and stay that way forever and expect to survive. So be adaptable, open-minded. That's probably what I would suggest. Learn from everything. Every single data point and interaction is information that matters. You just have to keep track of it and figure out how to categorize it in your brain and what it means, and you'll start getting a pretty good feel for what's going on.
Yeah, I like the fact that you brought up your personal situation where I can totally relate, because I am very much so have a routine, and if things are out of place, it kind of throws everything off. But I also like the fact that you mentioned that you got to be adaptable in business, so that's a key thing there. But I feel like this is the stuff people rarely talk about out loud or kind of bring up, but it's what really helps, I guess, our listeners or any listeners understand the mindset behind, like in a position like yourself.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've put a lot of work into myself to get here. I've not always been as level-headed and calm as I am when there's things that happen that don't make sense to me. I used to get really frustrated, especially market forces that it's like, this doesn't make sense. And I'd literally get upset about it. I've spent a number of years in therapy just working on learning myself, just digging into, it's like, God, I reacted this way to this the other day. Where did that come from? Like, it's so important, and I think that gets undervalued. I mean, obviously, for mental health reasons, if there's that's extraordinarily important. But it's also valuable if you just want to grow as a person. Like, even if it's not therapy, figure out a way to explore yourself and understand yourself. And it sounds weird, and I don't think that's something that's really talked about. Like, all of us behave a certain way. A lot of us function and probably are relatively mentally healthy. But why do you act the way you do? Like, ask yourself that question. If you don't know the answer, there's probably work to do.
No, I couldn't agree more. I love the fact that you touched on that because I feel like mental health doesn't get discussed enough. I'm actually myself exploring therapy and things like that, and I don't think everybody, or I feel like maybe it's just men are more prideful when it comes to that type of thing, and especially the older generations, they're like, you kind of just suck it up and do what you got to do. And, it's like, but men's mental health is, I mean, everyone's mental health, but especially men, because we're supposed to be these providers and these protectors. And I don't think sometimes women they don't really understand the pressure that men go under. So, especially in someone in your position, you guys have even more pressure than the average man. So it's like, yeah, that's a big deal. And I hope a lot of people look into it. And even though you might feel like you were mentioning, like you think you know yourself, or you may feel like you don't have any issues, it still doesn't hurt to talk to someone. And now they make it so easy. You can like have virtual visits on your phone. You don't even need to leave your home. I mean, and it's very affordable now. Yeah. So yeah, I encourage anyone if you feel like you don't have anything going on, but you just want to learn about yourself, that's a perfect thing.
And it is. And I talk about that openly. All my employees know. It's like, hey, I'm laid in every fifth Tuesday or whatever it is because I have my therapy in the morning. Like, it's not a secret. I'm not embarrassed by it. Like, I believe I could do without it just fine. I did start at a time of crisis for myself and have stuck with it. And it's gone from addressing the crisis to helping me become a better person, a better boss, a better spouse, a better father, and just generally a better person and just more level-headed in general. And I feel like I notice the difference night and day. I just feel more proud of myself. I'm able to have boundaries in my life and feel okay with them and talk with people, mediate different stuff between employees when there's employee stuff. And until you understand yourself, it's hard to really be able to understand other people as well either.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people could relate there. And I don't think I ever heard of anyone really, I guess, after therapy saying it was a bad experience or, oh, I didn't get anything out of it or that. I've heard nothing but good things.
If you find the right person, I think having the right therapist that knows where to push you and what questions to ask and what your curiosities are and learn your personality, that kind of stuff, is important. But yeah, if you put the work in and want to understand yourself, it's enlightening.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that we touched on that subject for sure. Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to shift into the future a little bit. I know you guys taking a practical approach to AI or some automation technology. You guys use it, I guess, more so for efficiency, but not at the expense of relationships. But when you think about the next couple of years, what's maybe maybe one or two parts of your workflow that you think technology will naturally take over?
Being able to summarize and put data from a large scale into useful bits of information and useful reports or however you would consume that information, but being able to leverage your own data and probably in some cases access to other markets and other competitors' data that people are trying to combine just to have a better picture. Having AI be able to parse through that, and as it becomes more connected and other things, it's going to be able to look back at weather patterns in different areas that could have impacted rates. I think it's going to give us much more insight to make better decisions. Moving forward is where I really see it. I think a lot of what we do already is going to get refined further. There's really some awesome stuff happening in voice AI. I've done a couple demos that it's like There's not the pauses. It's not weird. You feel like you're talking to a real person. So I think that's gonna progress and become more useful in certain areas where phone calls are useful. Other than that, it's so hard to predict because every week that goes by after the birth of AI, I guess we'll call it, the pace of changes accelerates. Because at first you start, it's okay, we have a base AI, and then that grows a little bit. We're to the point now where AI is programming AI to become, more useful. So as each iteration or generation of AI, which a generation may be a month, gets upgraded and updated and has more information, makes more connections, it's programming its next generation. So it's absolutely exponential. So it's so hard to predict where that's going to be in a year, let alone 5, but it's going to be farther than probably the average person expects.
Yeah, no, I feel like a lot of people don't know that AI has been around for a long time. It just wasn't mainstream like it is now. The last maybe not even 2 to 3 years, it's really exploded. But now it's open to the general public, where before it was kind of a hidden thing and not too many people knew about it. But
Yeah.
no, I couldn't agree more. The next 5 to 10 years are going to be really interesting. There's so many crazy developments and things going on. It's like right now it's just in its like the infancy stages, it's just learning how to walk, and it's
Yeah.
already crazy now, so it's like,
Yep.
but I think some companies, I think right now, like a lot of bigger companies are throwing a lot of money at it. So it's harder for the mid to small size businesses to kind of get in the game. Sometimes it's expensive or they don't know how to go about it. But I think as time goes on, it will be open more and more affordable to all companies.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like one of those things where it's like if you don't adapt, you'll kind of get left behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And it's crazy because you do need to adapt. That's 100% right. How much and where? That's the other thing. It's like you don't either do AI or not do AI. It's a million shades of gray in between both extremes. For the one extreme, I actually had kind of an interesting conversation. I'm not sure if I proved my point or was right, but we're really close to being able to have a single employee, fully automated brokerage. We are not far away from that. There are already tools that will automate quoting. If you get emails in, it'll go in and it'll add on whatever it tells you based on what it looks at, give quotes right back. We have AIs that will take inbound loads or inbound load information, turn them into loads in your system. There's AI that's going out and scheduling appointments already. And there's AI going out securing trucks already. There's AI on the billing side. Like it's very close and just needs a little bit of initiative logic. And yeah, we may be competing against an actual AI brokerage in the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's something actually we've been talking with potential clients about. All those things you mentioned, people are interested in. So yeah, previously you did mention like scheduling, appointment coordination, maybe check calls.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask actually, but you kind of just touched on it. There is another part of the business you're starting to watch closely for potential automation, like the things you were mentioning, or is there anything else that you guys were kind of eyeing?
There's really, we're at a point now where we've really gone after all the low-hanging fruit. The rest of it is going to have to be, anything new we adopt is going to have to be a perfect fit, slam dunk to move forward with, just because it's either a high-touch type of area that we don't want, that we still want our personality coming through in, or it's something that's just clunky and not quite there and doesn't account for the, any of the weird nuances in that specific area. So we're kind of where we want to be. As new products and new capabilities come out, we just address them on a case-by-case basis, but it does kind of need to be a home run. We've addressed everything we really wanted to.
Yeah, so I think another one that there's some people that are developing some things that we've been working with where it's like a live call agent. I think it would be perfect for brokerages or any call center type of stuff. Is it will be on the call with you, and it literally transcribes things live, and it can help you to handle objections and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy what they're coming up with. But
yep, and just having transcriptions summarized, I think that's going to be one of the next big things. That's something we would probably look into. is if you can have an AI listen in, like, hey, this call is being recorded, and then it summarizes, and then at the end of each day, can kind of compile all that information into something useful that you can start looking at over time as far as where quotes were, what's the demeanor of the people you're talking to, are people happy, are they upset, is there more conflict? Like, it can start catching trends in that. That would be something that would be really interesting. I don't know if that exists or not, but just off the top of my head.
I think that may be already out there, because I do know for like my personal Zoom calls and things like that, and many other people I've seen used it in different many different companies offer it. But there's one called Fathom. There's one called Fireflies.
I've seen Firefly.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them out there. But that do transcribe the whole call. It even records it, but it can take the whole call and it will give you kind of key points, takeaways, what to do next, and a summary and all that stuff. But I don't know if it can be maybe inserted in different. I guess like different companies use different things for phones, not necessarily like digital phones and different things like that. So yeah, I don't know if you can incorporate them in that type of setting yet, but I do know they are available on like just video calls in different platforms. Yeah.
Yep.
It might be, or very soon. I mean, that's pretty much almost the same thing. Yeah.
Yep. There's phone lines and all the different service providers for phones could be a little bit of a road bump there.
The hurdle. Yeah.
Because everybody uses different processes. It's not like there's one way to connect and run a phone system. So
yeah,
integrate into 100 different types, however many there are. That's a little tricky.
For sure. And I feel like some people or some of those companies with different softwares for phone, like voice calls, some of them will be willing to adopt those types of technologies and some won't. So it's going to be interesting to see. And then people are kind of going to decide like, hey, do I want to stick with this phone software or switch to another one that has these capabilities, or
definitely not a plug and play scenario. So I kind of custom divide
not that easy, right? If tech could remove just one operational headache you deal with consistently, which one would you vote off the island first?
Realistic or not realistic?
I guess just something you've been dealing with, or something you've been noticing like, hey, I wish we could do this, or I wish this could be done, or I don't know, maybe just something you think could be I guess both, realistic.
Probably the transcript of the phone I talked about, or something that is really good at economic insight and prediction. I feel like that's one of my strengths, and I can tell you kind of what's coming. I have no idea the time frame though, because there's so many different events that, like, I've told people for 2 years now that we're getting close to the rock bottom and we're going to be putting carriers out of business and the rates we're at aren't sustainable. But I kind of had no idea when the catalyst was going to happen that started the snowball effect of getting behind on freight, where day in and day out there's not enough trucks and you keep falling further and further behind. We got there in the last couple months with the non-domicile CDL things that took enough trucks off the road that started that thing I've seen coming for 2 years into motion. So it's really hard to predict when some of that stuff is going to happen, even though you know it's going to.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I like hearing your take, because it's pretty obvious you're not chasing trends. It's like, a lot of companies want AI, but like we were talking about, they don't know how to implement it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see that you're using, the technology to support the business you already run, kind of not like reshaping it into something else, No,
first and foremost, we want to stay who we are. And we put a lot of thought into how we were going to reorganize into a new sort of structure that's going to be able to grow to the point we're 6 times bigger than we are now and still maintain a smaller feel. Yeah, first and foremost is that we need to keep our identity, what fits for us. Like, it can work for 99 other people. That doesn't mean it works for me.
No, for sure. Everybody's unique, and I think it's going to be a hard line as technology and gets better, it's going to be a hard line for people to kind of, between using the technology, but also keeping your morals or the way your company was before all this technology that.
I mean, there's been, I think of the identity of a company, if you rewind from, 5 years ago and then go back 20 years, got all these different facets about, work ethic, relationships, how you treat your employees, how you do like maintenance and all that stuff. The whole AI and technology has just added a whole other facet, I believe, about how a company can have a different identity and approach to business. So it just adds to the diversity of types of companies that are out there now, with how all in or how all out you are with technology and AI. It's a very big difference maker, good and bad.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting next few years for sure. No, I think that was a perfect way to end it. Joe, this was a awesome conversation. I appreciate how open you were and how much experience you brought into this discussion. So I think your approach to leadership and fairness, and especially like the long-term partnerships, really stands out. But for anyone listening who might want to connect with you or learn more about Schulz Logistics, where can they find you guys online?
You can find myself and Schulz Logistics both separately on LinkedIn. We got Schulz Logistics on Facebook, Instagram. We have a YouTube channel out there too, youtube.com/Schulz Logistics LLC, I think is what it is. But a quick search on Schulz Logistics, you'll find us on all the different stuff. We've been releasing little blurbs that I've kind of gone over, similar to this, a little shorter in length. But I actually addressed kind of how we went through the pandemic, and some of what we talked about today was actually just in something we put on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram here this week that is pretty relevant now.
Nice. Okay. Well, everybody, go check them out there. Again, thank you, Joe, for joining me, and to everyone listening, thanks for tuning into Inside AutoMind. We'll see you at the next episode.
Thank you.